And how many hours a day did you do lessons? 10 hours the first day, 9 the next, and so on. What a curious plan. That's the reason they are called lessons, because they lesson from day to day. Here we have an instance of a pun. Hello and welcome back to NibblePop. Today is going to be an extended lecture in the lecture series on rhetoric, that is figures of speech, and this is entirely based on suggestions sent by you through comments. Many of you have wanted me to work on different kinds of figures of speech, and especially I want to mention the name of Ananya Bhattacharya, who has given me a very good list of figures of speech which I could take up. Now, Ananya, what happened is when I was going through that list, I found that some of them were not that relevant, at least from the point of view of undergrad students. And since this is entirely focusing on your capability to identify them, especially under exam conditions, so I have handpicked some of the figures of speech which you have mentioned, and today's class is going to be on them. You please go on sending me suggestions because maybe we will not be making any video anytime soon again on this topic, but I can always communicate with you through the comment section. So the figures of speech which we are going to take up today, they are paronomasia or pun, euphemism, sarcasm, innuendo, allusion, palilogia, and we will also talk a little about Hendiadys. So these are going to be our focus areas today, and let's not waste any more time and begin the class. Pun is like a word play. In English language, there are many such pairs of words where they sound similar or they are spelled in the same way, but they mean different things. Now, poets and writers often use this special relationship between these two words or this pair of words to create an effect of humor or some suggestion, and this is called pun. I'm going to begin with a very humorous line. Is life worth living? It depends upon the liver. Now, when you look at the word liver, it refers to the organ in our body, which is a very vital organ, and therefore it's very important for our survival. So that is one meaning of liver. But when you look at the sentence, you also get a second meaning of liver, which means a person who lives. Liver, okay? So it depends on the person who is living if the life is worthwhile or not, okay? So you have two meanings but same spelling, L-I-V-E-R. This is an instance of pun. So you have two ways in which you can use pun. You can use words that sound the same but have different meanings, or words which are spelled in the same way, like we had the example just a few moments back. The spelling was the same but meanings were different. Alright, let's now look at some other uses. Again, I'll take up a humorous context. Her cat is near the computer to keep an eye on the mouse. Okay, whenever you associate a cat with a mouse, you obviously think of a real mouse, but this is about mouse which you use with a computer. Therefore, this mouse is a different kind of mouse, but this association of cat with mouse and computer is creating an effect of humor because the word mouse has double meanings. Okay, there is no real mouse here. Okay, but the way the sentence is framed, it appears as if the cat is looking at a real mouse. Now look at this sentence from Oscar Wilde's book. To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Now the word lose in this case, in the first part of the sentence, it means death of a parent. You know, when you lose one parent, it's a misfortune. Of course, here we understand that the writer means that one of the parents is dead. But in the second part of the sentence, to lose both, here this meaning gets a bit diluted because of what follows. To lose both looks like carelessness. Now, when you lose something because you are careless, that means that object is gone. It's not death. Okay, you lose your books, you lose your pens, you lose whatever you use. So that is because you're careless. But when it is in combination with losing a parent, it doesn't match because it doesn't apply in that way. So this is creating a funny effect, and that is because this word is used in a pun. So this is where you see that the words in question, they have the same spelling. Okay. Now let's look at something where the spelling is a bit different, but the words sound similar when you pronounce them. This is from Alice in Wonderland. Alice is asking a turtle about the lessons that the turtle takes in school. "And how many hours a day did you do lessons?" asked Alice in a hurry to change the subject. 10 hours the first day," said the mock turtle. 9 the next, and so on. What a curious plan. So Alice is thinking that why is the study time getting reduced here? Usually it should go up or it should remain same. So she says, what a curious plan. Now there's this Griffon who says, that's the reason they are called lessons, because they listen from day to day. So first the word is lesson, Lesson, which means something you study. In the next part, the spelling is Lessen, which means to get reduced. Alright, lesson. So associating lessons with lessons, because they sound so similar, here we have an instance of a pun. But here the spellings are not same. Okay. I want you to think about a line which does not have any humorous effect, but there is a pun there. And there also the spellings are different, the meanings are different, but the words sound similar. In fact, the second word is not even mentioned there. The moment Satan in Paradise Lost, he reaches the plane of hell, which is also a burning place, and he feels a lot of fire, and he puts his foot down, then Milton says, "Such resting found the sole of unblessed feet." Sole of a feet means the portion of the foot which is touching the ground. Okay? But because there is this word unblessed right after this, so we automatically associate the word SOLE with the word SOUL, which means your soul. Okay? And this is a very subtle use of pun playing on this word SOLE. Alright? So these are the ways in which writers can use pun. The next one which we'll be doing today is euphemism. I didn't want to talk about euphemism today because we have already talked about periphrasis, and you can say euphemism is a special kind of periphrasis. If you remember what periphrasis is, it's a roundabout way of saying something. And while doing a periphrasis, I had said that people use periphrasis for two reasons. One is if they want to beautify their writing, they want to show off their vocabulary, then they use periphrasis. Instead of saying one word, they say 3, 4, 5 other words, which almost mean the same thing. Or second use of periphrasis is to give certain news to someone or break certain news to someone which might be unpleasant to them if you say them on the face. So you use a roundabout way of delivering that news. Somebody is dead and you just say that he is resting in eternal peace. So that is periphrasis. But euphemism is a special kind of periphrasis where this second usage is seen. Alright, euphemism is when you are not directly saying something because you don't want to hurt somebody, or you don't want to talk about a subject which can be a taboo for people. So, you just go about in a roundabout way using different kinds of words, not going straight to the point or not going direct about what you want to talk about. That is euphemism. So the basic reason why people use euphemism is to reduce the shock effect on the reader or the sensitive listener, okay, or the person to whom the speech is addressed. So euphemism is also a political weapon, because political leaders often use euphemism so that they can make their speech very audience friendly. They love to hear to that person, nice orator. Now people confuse this word euphemism with euphuism. Euphuism is something else. Euphuism is when you use unnecessarily stylized writing. You use a lot of Latinized words and bombastic words, be like Shashi Tharoor, if you know what I mean. So that is euphuism, that is use of bombastic words, unnecessarily verbose expressions. But euphemism is, you don't have to use bombastic words. You just go roundabout way in order to say something in a nice way instead of saying on the face in a blunt way. All right? Yeah, let me give you some examples. You all have read Macbeth. You know about the situation where Duncan is going to arrive at Macbeth's place, and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, they are planning to kill Duncan. But the words which Lady Macbeth uses, she is very careful not to use the word murder, kill, primarily because she does not want to shock Macbeth. And she knows that Macbeth is in a very precarious state. If she uses something very blunt in her speech or expression, then he might consider not killing Duncan. So she softens her words and says, "He that is coming must be provided for." Provided for. No, when you say that you will be providing for a guest, it's a very natural thing you do. That means you welcome the person. But here provided for means we will take care of him and we will kill him. "And you shall put this night's great business." What is the great business of the night? The murder, or the plan to murder Duncan. "You shall put this night's great business into my dispatch, which shall to all our nights and days," and etc. She goes on. So look at the way Lady Macbeth is carefully choosing her words, and this is an instance of euphemism. All right. Very closely related to euphemism is another figure of speech where the writer or the speaker also uses an indirect way of speaking, suggestive. But here the suggestion is a different kind of a suggestion. Usually this kind of a suggestion has a sexual angle to it, and this is called innuendo. Usually sexual angle, I said. It can also be, it can also have a romantic angle. It can have an intention of hitting at somebody without being open about it. All right, that is innuendo. All right, so we have had this word in our discussions of different kinds of plays and poems, and even, I guess, a Rape of the Lock. All right, so innuendo is a word which you are probably familiar with. It basically means an expression with a suggestion, with a hint, and that hint has a negative angle to it and often a sexual angle to it. They are also used to insult people with being politically correct. All right. Suppose you go to a museum, an art museum, and there are a lot of paintings everywhere. You look at a painting, the painter, he comes and he asks you that, "What do you think of this painting?" And you say, "Oh, what a wonderful looking frame." That means you are totally disregarding anything that the person has painted. Number one, you're talking about the frame when he's asking about the painting. That means that painting is so bad you don't even want to talk about it. So this is again not a kind thing. In euphemism, the basic intention is to be kind, but in innuendo, the idea is to actually insult. All right, so this is here what we get. Again, a few moments back, while referring to Shashi Tharoor, I had said you know what I mean. Whenever a person uses the expression, you know what I mean, that means I had said something without explaining, and I want you to think about the whole thing as an insult to that person. When I had said that Shashi Tharoor may be equated with euphemism, that is unnecessarily stylized writing, what I actually meant is Shashi Tharoor writes badly. Okay, that is not a good English at all. But I cannot say that. So I used a kind of innuendo which ends in the line, you know what I mean. So whenever you'll see the expression, you know what I mean, then chances are that there was an innuendo just before that. Alright. So remember the difference between euphemism and innuendo. Euphemism makes things kinder to hear. It has no hostile or hateful intentions, but innuendo usually hostile, darker intentions or sexually suggestive. Now, speaking of harshness, the figure of speech which is like the emperor of harshness is sarcasm. Sarcasm is when satire is filled with bitterness, that is called sarcasm. Innuendo may or may not be sarcastic, but sarcasm is something which is used as a weapon to actually hurt somebody's feelings. If I say he is an amazing teacher only if you manage to stay awake in his class, this is direct insult to that person, where I'm actually saying that he is so boring that nobody stays awake in his class. So of course he is not a good teacher. Okay, this is dark humor, insulting and harsh, as you can understand. If you want to get examples of sarcasm, you will find in some of the lines, even in Rape of the Lock, which is otherwise very sweet and friendly and full of pretty lines. There you will find some sarcastic words. Go for Gulliver's Travels, full of sarcasm. Go for 1984, full of sarcasm. And usually sarcasm is directed at maybe an individual. You can be sarcastic towards another person, or sarcasm can be directed at the whole society who are turning insensitive. So sarcasm is something that is the basis of characters like Jimmy Porter in Look Back in Anger. That is the life and force of that character. I don't know if I will ever do that play with you, but that used to be my most favorite play during my college days. Alright, now let's come to a very easy figure of speech, which I don't know why I missed while doing the series. It's allusion. Allusion is something you already know. Whenever there is a reference to something external, maybe to some fairy tale which everybody knows about, to some mythological characters, to some historical events. So whenever you have any kind of external reference in a poem, in a novel, which is very common, they are full of these kinds of references, that is called an allusion. So allusion depends on the reader's understanding or knowledge of a common database of references which matches with the authors. I mean, see, if you are from West Bengal and you are reading a story, and there you come across a character who is compared to someone like Gecho Dada. Okay, I'm just giving you an example to make you understand it. Gecho Dada. So if you are a Bengali person, and if you are a little bit well conversant with Sukumar Rai's poems, you would immediately understand that Gecho Dada is a character from Hojo Borolo, and there this Gecho Dada character is a cat who is always absent and you can never pinpoint where he is. So if you are a Bengali reader of Sukumar Rai, then only you will be able to understand the allusion to Gecho Dada. Alright. Now again, this whole thing is happening in a close knit community in which the author and the readers both belong. And that is why sometimes we get difficulty when we go and read texts that belong to different kinds of communities. And therefore an Indian might have problems when he or she encounters texts by Chinua Achebe. Again, students from Africa, they might have problems if they want to study texts from writers of Australia. So that is not because of any difference in intelligence level. Allusion means you know the stories, the mythologies, the fables which the writer is referring to. So allusion depends upon the writer's understanding of the reader's knowledge also. We can have 5 kinds of allusions. Historical allusion, where you refer to any historical character. Just remember one thing, if I give you an example where I am saying that Hitler was a very cruel person, he was the reason of so much violence. This is not an allusion. Here I am talking about Hitler. Okay. But if I say that Sylvia Plath presents her father as if he was the Hitler of the house, there I am using allusion. So I am not talking about Hitler, but I am using Hitler as a reference, as an external reference, where you might have to actually look up Hitler if you don't know about him. We use historical allusions all the time, even in our common speech and expressions. Mythological allusion, second kind of allusion, Ghore Shotru Bibhishan. Okay, that means Bibhishan is considered to be the enemy of the family because he went out against his own brother, against Ravana, and often people who act against their own families, even for the greater good, are referred to as Ghore Shotru Bibhishan, or Vibhishan, the enemy of the house. So these are the ways in which mythologies are referred to unconsciously, consciously, by writers, by common people even. If you remember the first act and first scene of Twelfth Night, Orsino is talking about his love and all, and there we have reference to Diana and Actaeon. Okay, so then you had to look up what Diana and Actaeon was all about. So there Shakespeare was asking you to look up a story because, well, you didn't know about it. But if you were a reader who already knew about Greek mythologies, then you would immediately understand the whole context. Alright, so it can be mythological, literary allusions. When one writer talks about any character or any writer that went before him, that is literary allusion. Eliot is full of them. Okay, when he says in Prufrock, I am no Prince Hamlet, he is actually referring to the play by Shakespeare and the character made by Shakespeare. So this is an instance of literary allusion. Wasteland is full of literary, mythological, historical allusions. It's so dense, packed with allusions, and that's the reason why I am really very apprehensive to take Wasteland up. I love that poem and I'm comfortable with the poem, but the problem is not with the poem. The problem is the way in which we have to deal with the references. It's going to take ages for me to understand which allusions you already know, which allusions you do not know. So in that case, this whole series, if I ever make a series on Wasteland, is going to be packed with dense references and cross-references. It's like a bloodbath of allusions, if you can say that. Religious allusions, again, similar things, and then cultural allusions. Cultural allusions are something which are most difficult to decipher by outsiders. Cultural allusions are possible when the writer and the readers, they both belong to one cultural identity or a close cultural identity. Okay, so therefore you can say that allusion expands the horizon of a writing it makes any work of art or any work of literature expand beyond its present connotation. So it goes beyond its present area, reaches out into the past, into the common bank of knowledge, you can say. Now, you have all read Kubla Khan. This whole poem is built on this allusion on Kubla Khan. The title of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it's beautifully alluding to something. The second part of the title is the modern Prometheus. So the whole title of Mary Shelley's work is Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. Automatically, she wants you to understand what Prometheus means. And this is also very interesting because her husband wrote something like Prometheus Unbound. So you see how allusions help not only in expanding the horizon of a work, but they also make connections between works which are written parallelly. So the figure of Prometheus connects Shelley's and Mary's works together. Because be it a novel by the wife or a play by the husband, it's all about man's resistance to compromises and conventions. That is what Prometheus is. Alright. So that's allusion. Let's come to a very easy one, which is called Palilogia or Palilogy. It has the word pali, which is again similar to poly, which means multiple. So it is obviously going to be something about repetition. So this is essentially a scheme, not a trope. Look at these two lines. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Happy, happy bough that cannot shed. The first one is from a nursery rhyme, we all know. And the second one is from the poem by Keats. If you know the poem, write the name of the poem down in the comment section so that I know that you are paying attention. You're all alert and not asleep yet. Okay. So in these two examples, we see repetition. Twinkle, twinkle, repeated. Happy, happy, repeated. So whenever words are repeated, it's called Palilogy, Palilogia, whatever you say. And this is done for emphasis. Now, when I said repetition of words, not just words, also phrases. Okay, so maybe 2-3 words together make a chunk which is repeated. That is also called Palilogy. So you will have many instances of Palilogy, and there is a high chance that you can identify one in the passage which is given to you in exams. Finally, let me talk about Hendiadys. Hendiadys is a figure of speech where two words are connected with and, but they represent one single idea, where one word is basically qualifier of the other word. Qualifier means either an adjective or an adverb. Look at the expression, this room is nicely warm. This means that the adjective warm is qualified by the adverb nicely. But if you say this room is nice and warm, then you are using two adjectives, nice, warm, but the idea is one single idea, that is nicely warm. So instead of using the qualifier nicely, you are using the two adjectives as if both of them act in the same way, but no, one of them acts as a qualifier. Nice acts as a qualifier of warm, but instead of saying nicely warm, we are saying nice and warm. So that is an instance of Hendiadys. The origin of this word Hendiadys, it has the meaning that one by means of two. Okay, this means that there are two words, there is a conjunction and, but the idea is one single thing. If you say, I ate ice creams and cakes, it won't be Hendiadys. That's fine, you can always eat ice cream, then you can have cake. But Hendiadys is something where you have one single idea. If you talk about examples in literature, Hamlet is full of Hendiadys. There are like almost 60 examples of Hendiadys in Hamlet, especially in that nunnery scene where Hamlet is saying to Ophelia, get thee to a nunnery, that whole part. So you have a lot of examples of Hendiadys from Shakespeare's play, and it creates, you can say, a literary effect. And if you are lucky, you will be able to identify them, because the trick is you have to see if there is any and in the poem. Then you have to see what is that and doing. Is that and joining two nouns? And then you have to think whether those two nouns are separate entities or are they together. No. Bread and butter is a good thing to eat. When you eat bread and butter, do you eat bread separately and butter separately? No, you eat bread and butter. So this whole thing is one unit, that is Hendiadys. So you have to understand whether the and in your poem is joining two words to give one single idea, or is that and acting as a separator of two things which are different, which can exist separately. Then that is not Hendiadys. So if you are lucky, you'll be able to identify them. I think we have reached the end of today's class, and thank you for your suggestion, Anona, and others too. One of you also said about refrain. When we were talking about anaphora and epiphora, I was talking about repetition of a single line in consecutive sentences, at the end of consecutive sentences or clauses. Refrain is also a very similar thing. In case of refrain, you have repetition not in consecutive line ends, but after certain intervals. So whenever one line is repeated at regular intervals, that is called a refrain. So it keeps on coming, because that is the focus of that poem. That is the main point that the poet wants to establish. So that is a refrain. If you know about Dior's Lament, where he says that past, so may this be. So that line recurs. So recurrence of one line may be called a refrain. It can be a whole line, it can be a short phrase, or it can be a couple of lines at times too. Okay, so that is refrain. I'm not going into any details there, just refer to it because you asked. So I hope you have enjoyed today's class. Keep practicing so that you get more and more proficient in identifying figures of speech in your exams. Since I was getting a persistent request for Greek influence, which is part of philology, and I missed that one. I had done French influence, Latin influence, and then Scandinavian influence, but I did not do a video on Greek influence. I will be making my next video on Greek influence, and I'll also attach a link to a handwritten note which I've prepared. So stay tuned, stay connected, because the video on Greek influence is going to come up right after this one. So stay connected and keep suggesting, and we will try our best to meet your demands. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. See you in my next video very soon. Till then, stay happy, stay subscribed. Bye-bye.